Hello and welcome to Adda with Eshaan Akbar. I'm Eshaan Akbar and this is an Adda, and you might be wondering, Eshaan, I've never heard of that word before. It's a Bengali word which basically means casual chat or hanging out. This is essentially what this is. It's a little bit more than that though. Adda is a bit of an event in Bangladesh. People will literally call each other and say, hey, shall we go and Adda? And they'll find themselves in all manner of places. It could be a tea shop, upon a rickshaw, by a lake. Every week we will do Addas with you. You're my guest. You send over some voice notes at speakpipe.com/Eshaan Akbar. Then I respond to them. This show is for all of you who have thoughts, questions or opinions and you want to throw out into the world in 90 seconds. I'm very excited for this first one. Let's see who we're hearing from today.
Hello and thank you. I have a mini dilemma that I'd love a little bit of advice on. So I am a finance contractor by trade, but I've been out of work for quite a long time, on and off the last couple of years, due to illness, kind of long-term illness. I'm now ready to get back into the workforce, and I've been applying all over the place and struggling. Now, one of the reasons is in my city, a lot of the big employers are cigarettes, alcohol, defence, military, that kind of thing. Those I would not touch with a barge pole. I'm very fixed about that. A vacancy came up via an agent that I work with fairly regularly. I have no problem with this company. However, I'm slightly concerned about the optics of a Muslimah hijabi walking into the branded offices of a sex toy company. I have no problem with that. It's just, the optics to other people look a little bit strange. And also, how do I explain to my fairly conservative Muslim grandparents, that, where I work? What do I say? It's a short-term contract for an electronics company, for an e-commerce company. How do I phrase it to them if I get the job? Thank you.
Well, Confused Hijabi, thank you so much for sending this through. This is a very interesting conundrum and one that I have a fair bit of affinity with, because you may not know, but I used to work in finance and I was in finance for a very long time, 6 years before I became a comedian. And I get the sense now that a lot of people who work in that kind of industry are basically fucked because of AI. Right. So the fact that you have been able to, after your long period of illness, sorry to hear that you are unwell, but happy to hear that you're feeling much better now. But the fact that you've been able to even potentially secure a job, kudos to you. What I'd like to know is, which city are you working in where you said the majority of employers are cigarettes, alcohol? Immediately that seems fun. And I've got to be honest, sounds like Manchester or Liverpool. Somewhere where, generally speaking, the population don't do much else. But then you said defence and military, and that concerns me, because that then sounds like quite a reformy place. And for you to be in that place just worries me slightly, given that you said that you are a hijab-wearing Muslim woman. Basically what I'm trying to say is, I hope you're all right. Wherever you are, whichever city this is, I hope, generally speaking, things are good. Now, the fact that you've landed potentially a job at a sex toy company, kudos to you, Missy. And to the company, I'll say that much, right? Because I'm presuming there was some sort of interview process that happened, and I'm going to assume that they saw you online and you were wearing your hijab. And I'm very happy to hear that that company weren't racist, right? That they saw a hijabi Muslim woman and thought to themselves, yeah, she's good at the job. That's all we care about. We don't care about the optics of this. So from that, you can probably be heartened by the idea that as you go into the office, you're going to a kind of company that won't have a problem with you being there. You know, Muslim women, hijabi women, and call this a hot take if you want, they fuck, right? They use sex toys. Of course they do. I mean, the population in the Muslim world suggests to me that Muslim women are sexually rambunctious and active. That's fine. As for telling your own family, I think you answered your own question. I think e-commerce is probably a very good way of describing the company that you work for. Because e-commerce is one of those phrases that kind of doesn't mean anything, it means everything at the same time. I think it's a very good way of shutting down the conversation. If someone were to ask you at a party, what do you do? And you say, I work for an e-commerce firm. The follow-up could be, oh, what kind of stuff do you sell? Now, that's where you ought to exercise a bit of creative license, right? And depending on the audience, you could say, oh, we sell silicon-based products. Perfect. No one needs to know. We sell electronics for seniors. Let them work out what that could mean. If they go off thinking, confused hijabi, I'm assuming they don't call you that, they call you by your name, but confused hijabi is so nice. She's selling electronic Zimmer frames. What a lovely, that's on them. You don't need to explain anything. I think if you say electronics, you're slightly misleading, because I know from personal use, not on myself, but I know from personal use that there are some sex toys that are not electronic. So, all in all, confused hijabi, I hope this helps, but I think broadly you've answered your own question, but I wanted to take the opportunity to congratulate you on getting to this point, both in terms of your career as a Muslim woman, and from me, it's a source of great pride when people from the Muslim community do well, even though I myself don't really practice anymore, because I found the sweet, sweet nectar of the Greg sausage roll. In terms of me, I've told my agent that I don't want to do any kind of work with, say, payday loan companies or debt collection companies, because I've had my own journey with shit like that. They made my life a living hell, especially and my dad's. Like when I was younger, essentially my dad would tell me not to answer the door to strangers, but in a bid to try and make it less scary for me, he would basically say, as soon as you hear a knock on the door and your mum or I aren't home, get on the sofas, the floor is lava, and make sure no one can see you. And it was a real adventure, right? As an 8 or 9 year old, you go, someone's knocked on the door. It wasn't scary. It was only later I realised they were fucking bailiffs, and they'd be coming over pretty frequently. So I've said that. Alcohol. Now, I've done lots of alcohol podcasts, and to be honest, I don't think I'd be averse to advertising alcohol necessarily, just because I think loads of people know that I do drink and enjoy myself. But I just worry that people would want my dad to know, and I don't really drink in front of my dad. It's a form of respect for him. I don't think many people. I would suggest that most children, irrespective, even adult children in their 30s, 40s, 50s, I would hope that they exercise some level of restraint in front of their own parents on certain behaviours, right? So I don't do that in front of my dad. That's my only concern I would have. I definitely wouldn't do defence contractors. I hear you completely. That's not for me. Cigarettes, I don't smoke. I mean, I can count on one hand the number of cigarettes I've had in my life, and all of those have been when I'm really inebriated. What else wouldn't I advertise? Oh, anything to do with Liverpool Football Club. I don't know why they'd ask me, but I'd have a real problem with that.
I don't know what to say. I just saw your post and decided that I wanted to take part. So, here you are.
James, I love this voice note so much. First thing, you're honest about the fact that you don't know what to say, and I think not enough people in the world admit that they don't know what the fuck to say. Notwithstanding the fact that I am currently recording a podcast, because everyone's got something to say about everything. There is so much noise out there, and it's very rare that somebody will say, do you know what, literally don't know what to say. So I appreciate you admitting that, and also for showing the enthusiasm of saying, I want to get involved. One thing that's a real gripe of mine, and this might be because I'm getting a bit older, I'm in my 40s now, and I feel like the dark corner of death is much closer to me. And perhaps this sounds a bit morbid, but I think it's quite a nice way to look at life. I feel like I've got fewer years left. No, who was it? It was Louis C.K. said something, and I know it's controversial because he's a controversial comedian by virtue of all the bad things that he did, but he is, unfortunately, an incredibly, incredibly funny person. And he said something about how when you get older, what you realise is there are fewer years left ahead of you and you've left all the good stuff behind. Something like that. And that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm like, particularly in London, I want people to really throw themselves in to life. Whatever it is, say yes. Even if it's something as simple as you've done here, where you've said, I don't know what to say, I just want to get involved. You are saying yes to life. Hopefully you are listening to this now and you've gone, a week or two ago, wherever you are right now listening to this, I would not have thought that I'd be in this podcast and hear my voice back, and perhaps you'll send another one at another time. I really value this. I really value the power of involvement. I say yes to as many things as possible. And quite often, my rule is, if I'm faced with a choice, say there's two options of things I could do, and one of the options seems like a more boring one, I usually go for the option where I say, what would make the best story in 5 years' time? Notwithstanding that right now, I've probably put the term of that down to 3, just in case. You just don't know, do you? So, James, thank you so much for sending this in. I hope it was worth your while. I really hope you're enjoying this episode of Adda with Eshaan. Please don't forget to subscribe, comment, rate, or even better, review. It really helps the podcast grow. Also, send in your voice notes at speakpipe.com/Eshaan Akbar. Let's listen to the next one.
I genuinely think that if we as a society across the globe all come to a decision that no one cares about creased clothes and, no assumptions being made on someone having creased clothes, it would save everyone so much time and effort. And, if governments across the world ban irons and steamers, how much time would it save the world? How much electricity will it save the world? Think about all the laundrettes, not laundrettes, the dry cleaning businesses and whatnot, not being required anymore. Obviously, there's still got to be clean clothes, but if they're creased, who cares? I just saved tons of carbon emissions and time. Who gives a shit about creased clothes, man? As long as they don't stink, who cares?
Tabarak, you have come to the right person on this topic, because I was a relentless ironer. I loved ironing. I took it very, very seriously. And I think it was a reflection of the job I did. When I used to work in finance, I had to feel like I belonged. So I would have crisp, beautiful shirts. The collars and the cuffs were just perfect. And I don't know what it says that ever since I started comedy, I've slightly given up ironing anything, really. Although, when I used to wear blazers, I would do what's known as the showbiz iron, where I would only iron the bits of the shirt that were visible, right? So it would be the upper bit of your chest, maybe a sleeve. Now, I think broadly you're right that people who judge others on how creased their clothes are can get in the bin. However, I will say there is a level of creasage at which point it becomes unacceptable. And situationally, that level of creasage, the leeway you have, gets smaller the more formal the situation is, right? So let's say you go to the pub. Let's say the pub is the most informal place we can be, and we go all the way up to, what is the poshest thing I can think of? An evening soiree where the aristocracy are present. Okay? That is the whole gamut of the social experiences. Actually, below pub, let's go a trip to Tesco Express, right? Now, up to Tesco Express, the level of creasage you're allowed is kind of unlimited, right? Because even if the staff think, oh, look, a crackhead's come in, As long as the crackhead pays for whatever the crackhead buys, we don't care. Okay? So you can go in fully creased. If you have a Tesco Express level of creasage and you've turned up to the Natural History Museum for an evening do, I think it's fair for people to judge you, because that is a disrespect to the situation. That's a disrespect to the environment. And also, I think it's a disrespect to yourself. I concede somewhat that there are these rules about human beings and human interactions that can sometimes feel, particularly in the UK, can feel a bit heavy and a bit boring. Like, golf club rules. You've got to wear completely ironed trousers and whatever it might be, specific colours. Those things can be quite irritating. But I think that there is some value to feeling good, feeling like you belong in that wider environment, and not have to worry about whether or not people are judging you for the fact that you've got creased clothes. I am awful for going into hotels, asking if they have an iron. Quite often they say we don't keep irons in the room because, people use it for all manner of things. You're going to have to pay us a £5 or £10 surcharge. I then paid that £5, £10 surcharge, take the iron to my room with the full intention of ironing my clothes, and then I don't. And I think the reason I don't is because I'm overweight. And when you're overweight, you wear a creased T-shirt, it just irons itself. That's a real privilege of being slightly overweight. And trousers, I don't think people are really looking at trousers. Trousers, you can I believe the creases kind of come out. So overall, Tabarak, I think you're broadly right, but I think in certain situations, it's okay to concede that ironing your shirt or your trousers is worthwhile, mainly for you to not feel too out of place. If you're one of those people who's like, I don't give a fuck what anyone thinks about me, I'm going to wear a fully creased shirt and pair of trousers in Buckingham Palace in front of the king, he can go fuck himself. Given the number of people the king meets, I don't think he's going to remember the person with the... No, actually, I disagree. I disagree with myself. The king would remember the person with the severely creased shirt and trousers, and that might be quite a good way to make an impression. So I think I've had a circular argument here. The most formal thing that I guess I've ever been to is many, many moons ago, I was part of a German-British diplomatic exchange called the Young Königswinter Conference. And they took, 10 British people over to Berlin. And on the first night, we all went to the German ambassador's house. And this is the height of formality, right? And you know what my play was, Tabarak? I wore ethnic clothes, right? I wore it's called a sherwani. A sherwani is a sequined, really long tunic, heavy. And the beauty of that is, you can't really iron it because it's so heavy. And the amount of sequins on it, you can't see the creases, right? And I thought I was making a very, very bold point, by being this British person wearing something from South Asia. And unsurprisingly, the German ambassador noticed me because I looked like a chandelier amongst all these people wearing, black power suits. And he asked me what it was, and I said, "Is this Sherwani from India?" And he told me about the time that he spent in India. He asked me actually why have you chosen to wear this? And I said to him that I wanted to showcase the fullness of what it means to be British. Britain has a long history in South Asia, patterns of migration. I sound really clever, don't I? Patterns of migration over to the UK, and I am a proud British Asian person where I love Britain because I get to be as Asian as I am British. And he was suitably impressed. And later on in the evening, we all went back to our beautiful hotel, and the German delegation were sat opposite us. There was a lull in conversation, and one of the Germans asked, "Be honest, what do British people think of Germans?" And then I said, "We all think you're the grandchildren of Hitler." Slight pause, uproarious laughter, and then we had an amazing night out. It was such a good night out. We ended up in this squat house. It was like 4 or 5 floors, and they had every floor had different kinds of music, like classic German techno. There was a 1920s, 30s swing floor, and had a brilliant night out. But That was my most formal event I think I've been to, and I did not give a jot about ironing, but the hack was wearing something ethnic. I still got some friends from there. Like, some people have gone on to do some amazing things, like journalists at CNN. One of them is like an MEP now. And here's me recording a podcast in my bedroom.
Hey man, how you doing? I miss you. I see you more on social media than I do in real life. And I was once Mukhtar to your Buncharam, so pretty sad about that. If this was a text message, that would be followed by a crying face emoji. But as part of my message, I'm going to read you the 2 favorite quotes of mine from Marcus Aurelius Meditations. The first one is, when a thing's credentials look most plausible, lay it bare, observe its triviality, and strip it of the cloak of verbiage that dignifies it. In other words, Marcus Aurelius is teaching us how to call bullshit. And the second one is, never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. Which means, in future, I'm screwed. Hope you're well, having a good Friday. This morning I took the day off and went to watch Odyssey with the missus at the IMAX. Banging film. Hope you're having a good Friday, bro. Speak soon.
Hasib, how nice to hear from you. Hasib is an old family friend, and as you might have heard in the voice note there, he said he was my Mukhtar in Buntram's Orchard. In 2007, I directed a play for the Harrow Bengali Association, and such was my level of narcissism that not only did I direct this play, I was also the lead. And it was called Buncharam's Orchard, which is a lovely story about a man called Buncharam who has an orchard, and his children are basically trying to get this orchard off him. It's a story about inheritance and love. And Mukhtar was, I think he was the comedy foil, maybe. So it was lovely to hear from Hasib. What a lovely man. The only thing I hold against you, Hasib, as you well know, is that you are an Arsenal fan. I appreciated you saying that had this been a text message, I think it's a very telling thing that we have reached a point, and I wonder whether if I have any Gen Z listeners, whether you have this, where you think of communication in text messages. There have been times where I've been in conversation with people, and subconsciously I think about the emoji that I would apply to this situation. Is that just a me thing? Is that something that you do? I've also caught myself saying lol in conversation. I've said lol out loud, I've said lamau out loud, and I've said roffle out loud. But we say, I say it to my brother sarcastically, like he'll say something that he thinks is funny, and I'll say lamau, because I'm not lamauing. Does that make sense? Is that, no? Okay. Let me know if you do that. If you use text speak in normal conversation, let me know. Perhaps that's a speaking point we ought to pick up at another time. Thank you for those quotes from Marcus Aurelius Meditations. The first one was particularly interesting to me, where he says, effectively, lay it all bare and take out all the nonsense to see if it's really plausible. And this podcast really is an example of that. Because if you've been following my career, if you're one of those listeners who's followed my many attempts at doing a podcast, either with other people, either by myself, there have been many aborted attempts. And in all those aborted attempts, I think the one thing that is true, and I'd wish I'd read this quote by then, is there was just too much stuff. I was trying to do too much. I probably spent about, £10,000 on the Shame is Delicious podcast. I got a studio in Birmingham with Darren Harriott. We did it all up. We bought all this equipment, some of the equipment I have now. There was a point where I was filming and editing myself, and it was just too much work. And sometimes I think there's real value in going back to simplicity. When I was a speechwriter in a bank, that was a message I would often give to my CEO and my chairman, which is there's a lot of big words here, big financial words, we need to strip it right back. And they would often say to me, well, those financial words are very important because there's a financial speech. And you go, do you know what? Fair enough. Let's include the word FTSE 100 in it. It's a very crucial part of the speech. But all that to say is Marcus Aurelius is right. This happens in politics a lot. There's a lot of words said and you kind of get lost. The main message, the weeds get lost in it. So thank you for that. I think that's a very valuable thing to live by. And then the second one is to stop worrying about the future, because whatever faculties you have now are the weapons you have to deal with then. And that's kind of right to a certain extent. We can't really control what happens in the future. All we have is the present, which is why it's called a gift. Kill me, please. But yeah, again, I always find people like Marcus Aurelius and the quotes that we read from people from the past interesting, because they're obviously very insightful. But it's amazing to be able to have that level of insight that can then be applied to a world that they just would not have been able to envisage. Could Marcus Aurelius have envisaged a world with telephones and the internet and motorways and Deliveroo, social media, immediacy of pictures? He had the time to think. And it's impressive that we can still read his quotes today and go, oh yeah, that applies now. Fair play. I am partial to a quote or a poem from Rumi. Now, Rumi's a very interesting character to me because he's one of those people that I sometimes feel like yogic, golden milk drinking white girls get a hold of to give them a roundness of personality. Now, I only do 2 out of those 3 things I mentioned. I will leave it to you to work out what those things are. You've already got one of them, which is Rumi quotes. But when I went to Malaysia, I went to the Museum of Islamic Art. It was amazing. So beautiful. And Islamic art there's a real symmetry and beauty to it. And notwithstanding the fact that it was a Muslim world that gave us algebra and alchemy and things like that. And so you see all these beautiful patterns. And Rumi is particularly interesting to me because he kind of transcends what you and I might understand to be Islam specifically. He's more Sufi, and Sufism is something that I'm really getting into as I get older. There's this spiritual mysticism to it, and Rumi is a real proponent of it. Some beautiful poetry about love and world and the divine. So I got a book from the Museum of Islamic Art in Malaysia called Rumi, Mystic and Poet. Selections from his writings translated from the Persian, and I will read a poem from there, and we'll have a little chat about it. This poem is called Remembered Music. 'Tis said the pipe and lute that charm our ears derive their melody from rolling spheres. But faith, o'er passing speculations bound, can see what sweetness every jangled sound. We, who are parts of Adam, heard with him the song of angels and of seraphim. Our memory, though dull and sad, retains some echo still of those unearthly strains. O music is the meat of all who love. Music uplifts the soul to realms above. The ashes glow, the latent fires increase. We listen and are fed with joy and peace. Now, I love a genre of music called Qawwali. And Qawwali is Sufi mystical music. And a lot of Qawwali singers, they believe music and song can take you and transcend you to the divine, right? So when I did, little name drop here, I did a show called Celebrity Mastermind. And my specialist topic was Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, who is perhaps the most famous and ubiquitous name when it comes to Qawwali. His songs, or his Qawwalis, would last somewhere like 15 minutes to half an hour. And I really urge you to go and listen to some Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. He's had loads of remixes done to a lot of his songs. But if you can work your way up to some of his original stuff, which goes on to about 20, 30 minutes, I think you'd be really moved. He ended up working with people like Eddie Vedder, Pearl Jam, Pavarotti, and he was one of these people who would take this essence of music and take it all the way to make you feel like you're transcending the earth and into God. And it says in one of the notes here, it says, Sufis associate the spiritual influence of music with the pre-existence of the soul. While listening, they hear again the voice of God, to which all human souls respond in eternity, and the anthems of the heavenly host, which is God and the angels. So with that, I would say, if you're able to after this episode, maybe fire up a Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan song, or just any music that really connects you back to the earth. So thank you for listening to the episode. Go and listen to some music or a song. Tell me what you're listening to. I'd love to know what it is that makes you feel the same way than I do when I listen to Qawwali. Is there a particular song that really takes you away from yourself and closer to the earth? If you enjoyed this and want to send some voice notes, please do go to speakpipe.com/Eshaan Akbar. Send me your 90-second voice note if you want me to have a chat with you. Give it a rating on whatever podcast platform you're on. Give it a follow on Instagram. That's my main kind of social media for it, at Adda with Eshaan. And tell people about it, Tell people that, if you want a bit of an Adda, a bit of a chill podcast from a stand-up comedian that you love, I'll take an appreciate. No, fuck it. I'll take a heard of, right? That's enough for me to feel validated, okay? So do all those things. Really appreciate you joining me, and I'll speak to you again soon.